Hi, welcome back to the Cuzzy Sound channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I managed to sync together my MIDI enabled devices with my CV controlled modular system, the Project 12 behind me here. During the video I'll be talking about various bits of hardware, there's a few bits scattered around here that I've used in this setup. Now before I start, I'm not affiliated to any of the companies that I will mention, and I'm not paid to promote any of the bits of hardware, whether they be commercial bits or whatever. So I'm not actually associated with that. The only thing I'm associated with is Project 12. I've never made any money out of that either. So this is purely my experiences with a kit that I've picked up, accumulated, whatever, over the years. Okay, rewind a bit there. How did I get to where I am? Why am I trying to do this? Well, I recently spent my birthday money on a Behringer TD3 MO. Why did I do that? Well, it's a great little bassline synth, which is reminiscent of the famous, if not infamous, 303. Produces some lovely sounds, but it also has, on the MO version, quite a lot of patch points that I thought, right, I can start and plug that into my other stuff. Well, I've hardly touched any of that. Instead, what I started doing was looking at what I could do with its MIDI capabilities. So I've started plugging a few things together and trying to get things to sync. The key was to get away of having a shared clock whilst being able to independently sequence things. So in order to understand what I'm doing there, you have to understand the difference between a MIDI clock and a MIDI channel. Now, if you think of a MIDI clock as something like a metronome, and it's the same metronome is shared across any device connected via MIDI. The MIDI channels are the music information, the pitch, the way the notes are played, those sort of things. And if you're running a sequencer, it'll tell it how to play those notes. So if you've got everything set to channel 1 and you were running a sequencer on MIDI channel 1, all of the things that are on MIDI channel 1 will play that sequence all at the same time. But you can select different MIDI channels. So if you've got an instrument on MIDI channel 1 and then one, say, MIDI channel 2 or 3, then the one that's set to channel 2 or 3 could be running its own sequence, while the one set to MIDI channel 1 is still running what the sequencer is putting out. But because they are sharing the common clock, the metronome, they will all still be in time even though they're playing different sequences. And that is what I wanted to achieve. I want to be able to play different sequences on each of the MIDI instruments and also clock modules in Project 12, so that was in time with all the MIDI gear. It starts with a beat step. Now the beat step, Arturia beat step, I bought, it's one of the original beat steps, not the Beat Step Pro. I picked it up nice and cheap quite a long time ago when I first started with the synths, and I bought it because it was a sequencer, a relatively inexpensive sequencer, that gave me gate and CV output so I could plug it into the gear I was building. But it also comes with MIDI. If you plug it into a computer, it's got MIDI in, MIDI out. Well, I'm not using a computer in this. This is a doorless setup. So if you look at the edge of the beat step, you can see there is a cable. There's a white cable plugged in there. Now that's plugged into the MIDI out. So when you're doing it like this, it only does MIDI out. So it has to act as kind of the clock source, which is fine because that's what I'm wanting. And that plug that's in there, it converts, its MIDI out is a 3.5 jack. That converts it to a 5-pin DIN, which is what the rest of the gear I'm plugging in works with. So that's how I get MIDI out of that. And then at the side of it, you saw that there's the gate and CV. So I take patch leads out of gate and CV, and they will disappear off to project 12, which I'll show you where that goes later. So we'll follow the cabling. If we come out of the beat step, the next thing I go into is I go MIDI in on the TD3, and then the TD3 has a MIDI out stroke through, and I take that cable out, and that goes to MIDI in on my Roland System 1 synth. So that's all the MIDI gear cabled up together. They're all plugged into each other. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that they're all set up such that they are receiving the MIDI clocks, and that they're all on separate MIDI channels, because I don't want them all playing the same sequence that's coming out of the beat step. So we'll go and have a look at how we set up MIDI channels and make sure that the clocking's all sorted out for getting everything to talk to each other. Setting up MIDI channels is not as difficult as it first sounds. So if we start with beat step, there is a button on the bottom right here. If you press and hold that, the button's marked Chan. So if you press and hold that, then you can press any of the number keys to select the MIDI channel that this will transmit on. At the moment it's pad number 1, so it's MIDI channel 1. We'll leave it on MIDI channel 1 because that's how I've got everything set up. You'll realise why later. And let's say it's transmitting. because I'm coming out of the MIDI side here into converted to a 5-pin MIDI, it will only transmit this, so this isn't receiving MIDI signals. But the whole idea is to set up different channels so they share a clock but not the same MIDI channel. I'll make that more clear later. So that's dead simple on the beat step. If we want to do it on the TD3, then if you function key here, press and hold the function key, and then you can select one of these functions, and that one's marked CH. So if you press that, it lights up red, and that'll tell you which MIDI channel it is. You've only got a few seconds to do this. I'll do it again. You will see when I press that function and channel that number 5 will be flashing, because I've got it set to MIDI channel 5. But you could press any of these keys and set whatever channel you want. So function and hold it, press channel, and number 5 is flashing. So that means that TD3 is set to transmit and receive on MIDI channel 5. The other thing we have to make sure is set properly on the TD3 MO is the sync settings, the sync input settings, and they are accessed by pressing the back and the right next keys together. And you can see that the LEDs light up for a few seconds, and you will notice some were actually flashing. So when pressing this, it accesses these settings here along the top. So what we're looking for is internal, means that it'll use its own clock. MIDI means it's reading the MIDI input clock, and USB is obviously reading USB. And then we've got the pulse rates for the clocks here. You can set those at whatever matches your system, but you only have a few seconds to do it. But if you press these two, you will see that we've got MIDI flashing and 24. So it's set to receive clock signals from MIDI at 24 ppq. So we're ready to go with that one. So that's set to MIDI channel 1, that's set to MIDI channel 5, The next thing we need to do is set the MIDI channel on the Roland System 1. To set the MIDI channel on the Roland System 1, we have to start with the synth switched off. So we'll switch it off. And then we press the System 1 key, turn it back on, and the arpeggio key should be flashing, and then the MIDI channel that's selected is indicated by the numbers around the dial control, and the number with the LED at the side of it is 3, so that is indicating that System 1 is set to transmit and receive on MIDI channel 3. Turning the dial, you could set it to a different channel, and then turn it off again, back on, and we're ready to go. I didn't have to set the clock sync on the Roland System 1 because plugging a MIDI input into it appears to automatically assign that input signal as its clock signal, its MIDI clock. So that worked fine without doing anything other than setting up the channel. So then if we move on to the CV side of things, so we're coming out of the CV and gate from BeatStep and we go into Project 12. So what I've done, I've put the gate signal into the gate buffer. A couple of things there. It stops me putting too much load on the BeatStep output because it's now buffered, that connection. But it also allows me to split the gate signal into 3 outputs, all of which will still be a strong enough signal to drive everything else. So then one of the gate outputs goes directly to trigger the hi-hat module, and another one goes into a clock divider, and then out of the clock divider I've got a divide by 2 that goes to the kick drum, and an invert 2 goes to the snare, and the output from the snare goes through a low pass filter, and then all of them go out to the mixer, and that gives them my drums. Another copy of the gate goes up to a Vactrol VCA, into which we have a sawtooth VCO, and then the output from the sawtooth VCO goes through a ladder filter and out to the mixer. The CV for the sawtooth VCO is a CV that's coming from the BeatStep. So that's all the wiring. Let's go and have a listen to how it all works together. So we'll start with the BeatStep triggering the drums, and that sounds like this. Then if we add in the CV side of it, that sounds like this. What we get out of the TD3 sounds like this. And finally, I've got an arpeggio running on the System 1, and the speed of the arpeggiator is set by the MIDI clock, and that sounds like this. And then, when you put them all together, it sounds like this. Well, if you've been playing around with MIDI and looking at ways of using MIDI with CV equipment or whatever, then yeah, I found that the beat step, the original beat step, was a very simple relatively cheap MIDI to CV converter, but it also very capable in terms of providing a common clock source for everything else that you want to plug into it. So I hope that what I've managed to work out in this this video helps you in any questions that you might have on how to set up a MIDI stroke CV system. So go on, have a go, wire up your own.